Welcome back to Built to Ship, the podcast where we go behind the scenes with founders and product leaders shipping real AI products into the world. I'm your host, Tyler Postal from Voker, and today I'm excited to be joined by a fellow YC batchmate, Peter. He's a CTO and co-founder of Handled, an AI operations automation platform that takes on the manual work behind every order so brands can resolve shipment issues, returns, and customer questions without busy work. Peter, it's great to have you.
Oh, same here. Thanks for having me on.
Of course, it's good to catch up. I know we've both been super busy since YC 2024, and I'm excited to hear about what you all have been building. Maybe for the audience, let's start with your background, what you were doing before founding the company, and how you all got the idea.
Yeah. So prior to this company, Handled, I actually was working at Shopify. I was senior engineer at Shopify, one of the founding members of the draft orders team on Shopify. Built a ton of products from draft orders to payments, and a whole lot of payment infrastructure stuff at Shopify as well. And after that, I always knew I wanted to start a company, even before I joined Shopify. And it's funny because I always say a funny story was my first one-on-one with my manager. I had told him I'm going to join and I really want to work hard at learning how to build software at scale. And after 5 years, I'm out. And coincidentally, that's exactly what happened. After 5 years, I actually was out. So I knew it was time for me to go, start my company based off of everything I had learned at Shopify. And coincidentally, it just turned out YC actually just walked out at the same time period. And this is a no-brainer. So I left and joined YC. And I guess at YC, kind of solidified best principles on how to launch and grow a company. And yeah, after that, I say the rest is history. And that's what I've been working on.
Yeah. Amazing. I love that you always had that vision for starting a company, and you were even upfront with your manager about it. Actually, it reminds me of my first job. I joined a startup actually. And I told them that one of the reasons I wanted to join was so that I could learn how to start my own business. And it's great when you're able to share that with your manager and still get support. I think it's great to have employees that want to be entrepreneurial and start their own business. It means that they're probably going to be great team members. And I'm sure you contributed a lot to that team over those 5 years. What were some of the things? I think, Shopify is known for being pretty AI forward these days, right? What were some of the things that you saw there or that you built? Any of it that you were like, oh yeah, I want to build product this way, or anything where you're like, I want to do it differently when I start my own company?
Yeah, so it's funny because, at the time when I was contemplating leaving Shopify, that was really when the AI wave was just really picking up, right? So Shopify, amazing company, has always been at the forefront. So as soon as OpenAI released their API, Shopify was one of the first companies that got access. We had internal portals for people to actually try it out. I remember Toby even had a mini, I would say, crash course on how to actually build LLM-based apps, and he kind of mandated all the engineers to go read that crash course, and I actually did. And I remember at the time I built a couple personal projects, and it was just amazing. I think it definitely helped spark my curiosity. But then following that, talking about the product of Shopify that actually did ultimately, I would say, kind of push me towards this direction was Shopify has always been very, I would say, particular about helping merchants get their lives much more organized, make it easier to sell. That's pretty much the mission of the company, is to make commerce better for everyone. And one of the parts that I know merchants suffered a lot was operationally, right? And when the customer buys stuff, they actually need to take care of all the operational stuff that happens after the sale. And also there's a ton of operational work that happens before the sale. So Shopify had this app called Flow, and they still have it. And the whole idea of Flow is to help them automate things. So it's more or less, I would say, and if this then that builder of when this happens here, I wanted to do this here and all of that. So while at Shopify, I did build a ton of products that utilize Flow internally to get things done. But things are great, but they can always be better. And I had a better idea on how I thought, things could actually be built. And obviously Shopify being a large company, You can present these ideas, but they would necessarily not come out exactly the way you want it to. It might just take longer. And yeah, based off of that, with this, I would say a part of the inspiration for this company really comes about from trying to make flow actually be optimal and just be the greatest version of automations for merchants.
Amazing. So it sounds like while the company was forward thinking, it's, there's only so fast that a large company can move. And so you were like, hey, I really want to bring this vision to life. So you went out on your own to build it. How's that going? What does Handle do for your customers, and who's like an ideal customer of Handled?
Yeah. So Handled is the commerce automation platform. And pretty much we actually focus on automation and integrations for the entire supply chain industry. A sample client would most likely be a third-party logistics company like a warehouse, and typically warehouses from all sizes, small, medium, large. And also on the brand side, we have a couple brands, and these are brands that do between 30 million and above, like 30 million to I would say $100 million in revenue a year. Those are the target markets for the e-commerce brands we work with. So for us, what we try to optimize is to actually take the business operational task that happens after a customer places an order. So things like a customer wants to update an address, or a customer wants to cancel an order. They want to remove an item and switch it out for another one. Of course, this seems very simple on the surface, but when you have a 3PL working with hundreds of brands, it adds up really quickly and it just looks like absolute chaos. So a ton of 3PLs have operational policies where they don't even make this edits and this updates, or they actually just say we don't handle this type of thing because of the kind of task that comes along with it. But now Handle pretty much removes all of that. They can actually handle pretty much any operational task without having to hire more people and increase their headcount.
Amazing. And maybe for the audience, some folks might not be as experienced with this industry as you are. What is a 3PL?
Yeah, 3PL is just a short form acronym for third-party logistics, but you can actually use that interchangeably with the word warehouse. So if you want to call it warehouse, that's fine. Yeah.
Great. And just to make sure I'm understanding, is your customer and the users of Handled more of is it the 3PLs and the warehouses, or is it the brands that are using those warehouses?
So everyone has operational tasks. So the 3PLs have a lot of operational tasks as well as the brands as well. Right now, we've been focusing on working with the 3PLs, and eventually we're going to go up the value chain to work with a ton of brands. But in the process of working with the 3PLs, we have to work with your brands. So what we focus on is automating the work that happens between the 3PLs and the brands themselves, right? The communication pieces, the automation pieces, but then we would go upstream where we automate the task that happens between the brands and their own end customers. So that's the part that we haven't really touched yet, but we obviously are on track to do that because we already have the brands that we are working with.
Amazing. So it sounds like you're not only helping the 3PLs to save time and do these operations, maybe some of this like manual work, you're saving that for them, but you're also delivering through that, you're delivering a better experience to the brands because the 3PLs now can, kind of deliver more value to the brands they're working with.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, why don't we get into some of the AI features that really make your product differentiated and that weren't possible before LLMs? How, what would be the way you categorize the different features? Maybe just give us a little bit of background on, those components to the product.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So talking about, workflows, typically people think about workflows as, Zapier, Anytime, on all these workflow automation tools. And those tools are great. But obviously, I would say they have their place in the market. When it comes to business operations automations, there are a ton of things that actually need to happen that are way more complex and different rules on how things should actually function that I would say our tool is best suited to actually handle. One thing you would realize in general working with automation platforms is that you would typically have to connect to APIs to be able to retrieve data and actually send data back and forth. Now, in this industry, we have a ton of products that have great APIs, but we also have a lot that don't have great APIs. And we also have a ton that don't have APIs at all. And the problem is these tools are very dominant in the industry. People expect to use them. And if they don't have APIs and we actually have the goal of automating all the operational tasks, we need to have a way of actually working with these tools. So based off of that, our workflows actually integrate with browser agents to be able to
Mm.
extract and interact with these interfaces when we actually need them to. So our workflows are great in such a way that they can work with the browser agent, get data, and then come back and then use that data to call another API and actually get work done on that, and then go back to another browser agent to input information, get that information out, and pretty much use another API. So it's not just only one way or the other, like only APIs or only browser agents. You can actually use all of these things together and orchestrate them to actually get the work done.
Amazing. Yeah, I think we haven't really had a guest on who's talked much about browser agents, but it is a pretty exciting part of like the space. Maybe you could give a quick summary to folks, like what is a browser agent, and then we can get into some of like the capabilities and maybe the downsides of the technology today.
Yeah, so pretty much browser agents are actually, I would say, in a very simple form, AI agents that are capable of using the browser just like a human will, right? And most software engineers in the past will be familiar with, the concept of writing UI tests using Playwright, and this, I would say, improvement in LLM technology in the last couple of years has just taken that and improved it drastically. Now, before, when you talk about using Playwright, you had to be very specific on the elements you're trying to interact with on the user interface. And the downside, and I say that's why most developers did not like those kind of tests, is they were kind of brittle. They break. If something changes on the UI, you had to do a lot of work to make sure you were up to date with your testing to bring it back up, right? But with LLMs, you can actually just describe what you actually want the LLM to do or the agent to do on screen, and it works. And it's funny because even just 2 days ago, I was just explaining to someone how amazing it's been that we actually use the LLMs for controlling the browser, because one of our vendors that we integrate with redesigned their application recently, and the workflow still has been functional. The workflow didn't break, right? And that's because the LLM is able to know, okay, I just need to go click on this button that says this. So even if that button moves to a different part of the screen, it doesn't matter. He's still going to get the job done. And that's pretty much, I would say, the kind of expectation you would have from a human when they have used an app before, such that even if the app is redesigned, the human should still be able to navigate themselves through the app and actually get the work done. So yeah, that's pretty much it to answer your question on a high level, what browser agents do. And yeah, that's how we leverage it at Handle.
That's a great explanation. And I'm personally very curious about this because I actually haven't really used browser agents much. A lot of our customer use cases haven't involved them yet. So I've got a couple more follow-ups for you. Like maybe can you explain where do you think the technology is today? Like what are some of the things that browser agents can do? Is it as deep as like navigating 10 pages and finding out like where a setting exists in a product? Or can you give us a couple examples of like what you can do with a browser agent and maybe what you can't do with it?
Yeah. So obviously with, agents in general, they actually not the most deterministic, piece of technology to actually use. So first of all, I would say it comes with a lot of trial and error to actually make sure you get it to work the way you want it to work. And the better the prompt, the better the outcome. It's really that simple, right? So most of the time when it fails, the most likely reason is that your prompt was probably not descriptive enough, or maybe your prompt actually missed a tiny detail on how the user interface actually functions. So a good example of that is if, let's say, I wanted to change the calendar, the date on the calendar. Now, if I was using a standard date inputs in HTML, that seems pretty straightforward. But some nice user fancy interfaces would decide not to use a date input. Rather, they will use a button, right? And the fact that they decide to use a button just changes how it actually interacts with the page. So based off of that, you actually need to have a good understanding of the user interface you're working with and make sure that your prompt actually aligns with the reality of the user interface you're working with, right? So yeah, did you have a question?
Yeah, I guess I'm just curious, like what is the, over time people are figuring out like better structures for prompts, at least when it comes to like, let's say text to text situations. Have you come up with, or are there any industry standards for like structures of prompts? Like, is it like, do you tell the agent first, look at the page and observe what options there are? Or like, how would you, break down like the outline of a prompt for a browser agent? Is it different from like a text to
Yeah.
text
It's
situation?
good because you actually use the right word. So while interacting with a handled agent on the browser, we actually would use words like observe and words like act. So it's more like a page loads, and then you have to first wait for maybe 2 seconds and observe what's going on, and then based off of that, you can then take an action based off of what you observed. So in general, there is a lot of trying to let the agent see what it sees and understand what it sees, and then basically take an action based on what it sees. Yeah.
Okay, super cool. And when it comes to like once you figure it out, let's say you have a new UI you're trying to have a browser agent work with, you do some prompt tuning, you try it out, now it's working pretty well for this workflow. Do you still like what's the best practice? Do you still just run that agentically each time? Or now that there's like, you know, click here, click there, click this, do you now like turn that into something programmatic? Or, because to your point about determinism, I'm just wondering if even if you get the workflow right the first time when you prompt something, is there still this chance that it'll mess up later, just because it's non-deterministic? And if so, are there any solutions for that in the industry today?
Exactly. So there is a slight chance it would actually not work. And it's funny because I would say 12 months ago, I would have been the last person to actually say there's a slight chance it's not going to work. Because, I was just a very big skeptic about using LLMs in production for a ton of things, right? But I would say the models got insanely good, like unbelievably good in the last, I would say, 5 months, to the point where the error rate just drastically stopped, dropped. So one thing I would say is in general, when I had built a first few browser agents to get work done, I would always make sure that they would log to Slack anytime they've done a task and pretty much the outcome of that particular task they completed. And the good thing is, we have video recordings of every single task that is done. So it's easy for me to audit exactly what the agent did and be able to figure out where it made a mistake and then use that to actually refine the prompts in those cases. So I would say observability is such a huge thing to actually make sure that these browser agents are always on track. And given that personally, we use this agent for achieving business operational tasks, right? It's either the task is done or it's not done. Just like if you have a human employees, either they completed the task or did not complete it. And in every case, when we don't complete the task, we would always normally communicate that to the 3PLs and brands we work with. More like, oh, this agent failed. So the way for us, we've actually made this skill is by having a Slack channel where anytime our workflows / and our agents do work, they would always report what they have done, but more importantly, report what they did not do. So that way a human could actually take over and actually make sure it's done. So for almost all our workflows, we actually have a human intervention chat name or ID in Slack, where we know anytime this particular workflow fails, this is the person within the company we would always report to and let them know it failed. And then at that point, we can actually take action. Right.
That's great. Yeah, I love that. So it's like this person probably would have been doing the job before, but they didn't really have time to do it. Now they're getting most of it's getting done most of the time. And then if there ever is an issue, they know, they can go look into it. And I'm sure that error rate will keep going down, like you said, as models improve. Maybe my last question on this is just what are, just for my education and the audience too, what are the models? Is it just the same models as like, GPT 5.2 that do this browser use, or is it like a different set of models that are specifically trained for browser use?
So pretty much it's actually the same model. So for us, we actually use Claude, we use Opus, right? And pretty much I would say most important thing is that the model should be able to interpret properly what it sees and what it actually can do. And most of the time, the way this works is really a matter of taking screenshots and being able to understand the screenshots and then being able to translate that to an action, right? So we're not necessarily using any, I would say, specialized models here. I know like OpenAI has a ton of models for browser use, but, we can use those, but we actually don't tend to default to those. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, no, that's really helpful. Amazing. Well, I know we're close to time. This has been fascinating. I could definitely keep asking questions here, but I want to, give you time to share a little bit about Handled. I'm going to put your website on the screen, and maybe you can talk through who should check out Handled. How do they get in touch with you guys? How do they try it out? How do they follow along?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. So pretty much, as I previously said, Handled is a commerce automation platform. We work with 3PLs or warehouses and their brands. And the goal is that we want to automate all of the repetitive operational work that happens after a customer places an order. So if you know any 3PLs in general that actually have a ton of customers that they deal with, which all 3PLs do, right? And they obviously cannot, keep up with all the work they need to do, that would be an ideal customer for Handled. And in general, as well, any brands that actually have a ton of repetitive work that they would love to automate, we actually can handle that. And one thing I would say in general is that Handled, as the name of the company says, actually we handle a lot of things. There is hardly any task that we actually will not be able to handle because we've built the platform in such a way that it can handle a ton of generic, use cases. So the most important thing for us is always just understanding what the requirements of the customers are, and then coming up with an automation design document where we actually review what exactly you would want handled to perform in your business. And it's almost, I would say, some way of like hiring a digital employee, right? So once you're able to explain the job descriptions of this is exactly what you want handled to take care of, then we go ahead and spin up the agents that would actually get that work done. But for us, given the industry we work in, we actually, I would say, are more bigger on deterministic workflows that leverage agents when it cannot actually go through the deterministic path rather than the other way around, because we need to make sure that we always have the same result anytime someone actually uses our workflows. So that's pretty much it on a high level.
Amazing. So yeah, folks, check out itshandled.ai. Looks like you can book a demo and get in touch. And like Peter said, sounds like they'll do custom consultation to figure out what is the workflow you need automated and help set up your system according to your needs. Peter, thanks so much for coming onto the show. It's always great to catch up and miss the old YC days. Hopefully I'll see you in person soon.
Hopefully. All right. Have a wonderful rest of the day. Take care.
Thanks again. Bye. Thanks to everyone listening to Built to Ship. And if you're building something, go ship it. Bye now.
Bye.